Peace, family. Peace, peace, peace. I hope you guys are having a phenomenal day. If not, do understand and get that your day, night, wherever you are, is going to get better once your perception gets better. So, I wanted to talk about this subject. At first, I was like a little, really didn't care to discuss this. Um, but then I was like, well, maybe there's a parent out there that's probably going through the same exact thing or who has been through the same exact thing. So many of you guys, right, you know that I have four children, right? And my oldest child, he's 20 right now, but my oldest son and daughter, okay, my oldest daughter, she's 18. When they were small, okay, my youngest son, both of them had their daycare at that time when they was younger. But after they did daycare and they started going to, my oldest son started going to public school, right? I remember they would complain and say, he was too hyper and all this other stuff. And I remember I took him to my oldest son, I took him to the doctor and his pediatrician. And this was like a pediatrician that I had for years, okay? But the pediatrician, such a phenomenal guy, so amazing. And you can tell he was passionate about his job. But it was like a family pediatrician, like what all my children had seen this pediatrician, but he passed away. But early on, I would take my two oldest children to go see him. And I remember the school was, pretty much saying that my oldest son had ADHD and like he was too hyper and, stuff like that. And so when I took my oldest son to his pediatrician, the pediatrician pretty much was like, who said that? And I was like, well, the teachers, they saying it. And he said, this kid does not have ADHD. Now, I want to give you guys some context behind it. When I had my oldest son and my oldest daughter, they started going to school. One of the things my aunt, who had custody of me, she always would say, "Do not get your children classified," right? And I never really understood like exactly what classification meant. I mean I knew like, oh, classification means that they be in special ed or whatever it is like that. But I thought classification mean like they tell you, like the school tell you, like, oh, he's classified or she's classified or whatever. So I remember in the first grade, right, my son, they was pretty much saying the same thing. When he got to first grade, he was good. When he got to second grade, it started like, oh, he's not doing the work. We give him the work, he's not doing it. It would be some days he would do the work, some days he wouldn't do the work. And their recommendation was that he get left back. And I was really like, this started because I was like, oh my goodness, I really don't want him to get left back. But they was like, oh, it's best for him, and all these different things. And so I signed the papers for them to retain him because they was like, well, he should do good if he get retained. So I signed the papers so he could get retained. So then the next time around, they were saying, after he got retained, they were saying like he basically need to do, he need to, he need an IEP. And I didn't understand, like, really, and I think a lot of parents, when they are proposed with IEPs and stuff like that, probably don't have like a clear understanding. I know for myself, I didn't have a clear understanding, exactly what that was, IEP, which is individual education plan, right? For that specific student. And so I did, after that they was, just kept saying, he need to be, he need an IEP, whatever. Again, like he's gonna do well, and all these different things. And one of my things was, well, I don't want my child to be moved, right? Like go into a different class, pulled out of his class. And so they was like, no, well, we gonna test him and stuff like that. So they did the test, and he was still able to stay in his class, right? And while he was staying in his class, it was the same exact thing. It was the same. It was like nothing changed. Okay, he still was not doing the work. Okay, he still would do it sometimes, but now I'm not gonna say nothing changed because something did change. It was more so now he really wasn't applying. If he wasn't applying himself before, now it was like he really wasn't applying himself because, if a child is told like, oh, don't think too much of yourself because you have this issue with learning, they're not gonna expect too much for themselves. So therefore they're not gonna do too much. And all of this was like pretty much new to me. And so after that, as the years went on, I know like my oldest son, he had like self-esteem issues because I had, self-confidence, self-esteem, issues once upon a time. And I'm still working on myself, okay? But I had, wanting people to like me and all these different things and stuff. And I had to go through that whole thing. But I know it even played even a bigger part because now, if you are told pretty much like you got this learning disability, so to speak of, then you think something is wrong with you, right? And so that happened, you know. And so when my son got to high school, right, I remember, matter of fact, when he was in eighth grade, right, because we had moved to this new apartment I'm in now, and they was, pretty much, still saying the same complaints, right? And I was like, God damn it. Well, if you guys are still complaining and saying, like, he's not doing this and I got to come to the school and he's not doing all these different things, then it clearly shows that that don't work. Okay, it clearly shows that the IEP is not working. The him being at times my son would say, "Oh, the teacher just give me calculators." They pretty much just tell him the answers and stuff. So I said, well, if all of that happened, right? Clearly, it doesn't work. So I was like, I told the school that I want to take him out, and they was like, well, wait, he got like one more year, just wait. And at that time, I did know that the schools they get paid, okay, for every. First of all, if you have your child in a school system, in a public school system, each child get paid, okay. Each child, each student, the school receive money for their student, okay? Then if they are classified, the school get even more money, right? And I know that from my professor when I was in high school, and I had a professor because I was doing this fire and law program while I was in high school, and I would have to I would go to the college and stuff, and I would get credits and stuff like that. It was my senior year of high school, and I remember the professor who I had when I was in high school. Later on, I had when I went to college, and I remember she was saying like, each child that is classified, the school get money for that, right? And a Jewish professor, so cool, Miss Sadman. But then after that, So everything with the school, whatever. And so when I was, telling them I want to pull them out, they was like pretty much, oh, well, we don't think you should, just wait. This is pretty much his last year and stuff, because I didn't want that to go with him to high school. So I waited. So then when high school came, it was pretty much the same as that thing. And so then I said, you know what? I want to cancel. I want to drop the IEP. I want to take the special. I want to take that off, right? And so I signed paperwork, whatever. So, discontinue the IEP, to stop it and stuff like that. And my oldest son, he felt like, you know, like damn, like why I'm in here, right? Um, and then now with my youngest children, oh my goodness. So my youngest children, they didn't go to daycare when they was kids because I was like, I pretty much want to stay home with my youngest children. And so they didn't go to daycare. But with my youngest son, the same thing over happening all over again. And last year I signed the paperwork. I was hesitant because I remember my oldest son, he would throw in my face like, you signed the paperwork for me to get left back and all this other stuff. And, you put me pretty much in there. And I would tell him like, I know I signed the paperwork, but also you have to take accountability too, okay? And so with my youngest son, it's the same thing, right? They did they came to me. Actually, it's been going on for a few years. They were saying like he's behind, all these different things. Oh, we need to retain him. So last year I did, I signed the paperwork, and I was like very distorted. At first I went and signed the paperwork because I was like, you know what, let his father sign the paperwork because his father is the one that preferred for them to be in public school. He preferred it. And so what happened was his father, the teacher, no, I sent a message to my youngest son teacher, like, contact his father so he could do the paperwork. And she contacted his father, and his father pretty much was like, um, oh, I talked to her. Like, pretty much, oh, yeah, like, I know I'm aware of the situation, as far as my son being retained, but, I'm not going to sign the paperwork. I'm going to talk to her so she could sign it. So the teacher told me that, and I was pissed off. And so months had went on, and they pretty much, was like, oh, you gotta sign the paperwork. If you could sign the paperwork and stuff like that for him to be retained. And I was so hurt, like so hurt. And so I signed the paperwork. And mind you, it's so crazy because my son already get, and this was like with my two oldest children. I mean, with my oldest son and my youngest son, they both was getting Title I help, right? And my youngest son, he was doing 100 book challenge, but then they like he need more help. And I'm like, well, how much more help if Title I isn't working, and if regular the 100 book challenge didn't work, what makes you think that the IEP thing is going to work? And I've been through it already. So pretty much yesterday I was like, no, over the weekend, I was just like pissed off, right? Because I went to an IEP meeting, and pretty much they were saying like, oh, it would be messed up if the child is if he's retained again, and that would be very unfair to him. But and they was like, well, you have time to, go over the paperwork and make a decision. You don't have to make a decision now, but you have time to go over the paperwork and and then make a decision. So what wound up happening was I already knew what the decision was going to be. I'm not doing it, right? And so I said I wasn't doing it. Me and his father had a meeting with the IEP team, I'm the only one speaking up. His father is like, not saying nothing during the meeting. And I asked him, I said, why didn't you say anything? Like, you pretty much left me out there. It's like 8 people in there and you ain't say nothing. And he was like, oh, because it was like 8 people. So, then after all of that, after I made the decision, like, both of him and I made the decision that, he's not being tested and stuff. Then the school was like, oh, well, he's going to have to be retained. So I was like, but you guys just said a few weeks ago that it's unfair to him to be retained again. But because I'm not making a decision for him to get tested, you telling me that now he has to be retained? But what happened to is not fair to him. So I wound up, I was pissed off, and then they were saying the same thing with my youngest daughter, right? Like, she's behind. They think that should be retained, and she's in kindergarten. They think she should be retained. You know, and I said she's not gonna be retained. She's in kindergarten, and I was like, is they self image, and they was like, oh well, we understand what you're saying. It's the self image, but if she's retained, that should help with her self image. And I said, help with her self image, okay? Like they, and they was like, oh well, in the younger grades, that really don't affect them like that. Her being retained left back. So I said, you know what? I said she's not being retained. And it was like, oh well, in kindergarten, the choice is really up to the parents, but once they get to first grade, then the choice is no longer up to the parents. So after that, that was last week. I had a meeting with the IEP team again, right, for my youngest daughter. But this time for her just to get flat out left back. So I sent a email to the principal office because I was like, feeling some type of way. And I was like, this is discrimination because how 1 minute you guys are telling me that it's unfair for my son to be, retained. And then the next minute you telling me because I don't do the IEP and because I'm not, basically classifying him, that now he has to be retained. And so the principal had called me yesterday. My phone was on a certain percentage, so my phone was about to die. So I said, well, if you could call me back, later on. So he called me back and he pretty much was saying, oh yeah, we seen some issues. And this is the thing with me because my youngest son teacher, she'll say, oh, well, he's doing good. And then it'll go back, the same exact thing with my oldest son. Then it'll go back down. Then he goes up and then he goes back down. And so from me studying, okay, self-image, I know is his self-image because if I stay on top of him or if his father stayed on top of him, he would do his work. But afterwards, it'll go right back down. And one of the phenomenal books that talks about that is Psycho-Cybernetics. I'm looking for it. By Maxwell Maltz. This book right here, okay, it talks about that, about the self-image. And so I'm talking to the school about that, and they pretty much like, no, well, if that is the issue, he could get tested. And so I told the principal, I said, I've been through this before, right? And my oldest son went to their school as well, and it was no change, no different. And the principal pretty much was like, well, let's not compare them. They two different people. And I was like, and don't y'all get paid per child that is classified? And the principal would say, oh yeah, we do receive money. We do receive money, but the parents do too. But I'm not willing to sell my child out for a paycheck. And so you saying that the family received money, that ain't got nothing. I don't give a damn about the damn money when it comes to, me classifying my child. And what's crazy, because when my oldest son got classified, I didn't receive no cash, not a dime. Okay, because it wasn't about that. It was, I genuinely was thinking like, oh well, maybe this would help. It didn't help. It did not help. Not at all. And so since I'm aware of the self image and building up the confidence and stuff like that, I constantly play every night and throughout the day when my children come home from school, personal development, so they could change the way they think, the way they see things, just so their whole mindset can change. And it's so funny because when I do play it, which I play it every day, but I remember his teacher told me, "Oh my goodness, I don't know what you did." And this was the week when I had the meeting with the IEP team. His teacher said, "I don't know what you did, but it really, really helped." Javon was answering all the questions. He was getting the answers right, and I was like, wow, and then it went back down. So I don't know, but that's pretty much what I got on my plate right now. And I'm like, if I could just put them in a private school, because with private schools, they don't have this whole thing, with special education and stuff like that. That is like with public schools and charter schools, okay, that receive funding. Um, and so right now I just don't know. And then his father was pretty much like, so I spoke to his father yesterday and I'm like, so what we gonna do? So he's like, oh well, I'm gonna talk to the principal and stuff like that, and we may have to go to the board or whatever. And then he was saying stuff that was not true. He was like, but we may have to go to the board and speak to somebody at the board, and all these different things. So my whole thing was like, if you couldn't speak up when we had 8 people in the room, most likely you're not gonna speak up. If we go to the board, I'm most likely gonna be the one speaking up. Um, but and then I'm like, homeschool. But I was homeschooling my child before, and then he was like, he thought that I was unqualified, that I wasn't smart enough, I guess, because he was like, oh well, and I homeschooled our child for about, I think it was like 4 or 5 months, and then the next school year he was like, no, let's put him back in school. So I don't know, but I know things gonna work out. I know things gonna get better. I have faith in it, and whatever it is that appears to be going on, um, I know. And yesterday, like I just cried because you know, I was like, I can't see them retaining my son another year. Like I just can't see that, and I won't see that, and it's not gonna happen. Um, so I'm quite sure the answers are coming to me. Um, but his father pretty much was like, well, if he ain't meeting it, well, if they want to retain him, basically just like retain him. If he ain't meeting the qualifications, just and I'm just like, damn, bro, like really, like wow, I'm just like baffled, because I'm like, you know how really that are really. So I'm coming up with a solution. Um, but yeah, I just wanted to share that with you guys, because I'm always showing you guys like, yeah, this and that. But to the parents that's out there, I know, you know, you probably growing through it. I want to say growing through it, but it'll get better. It's definitely gonna get better. And focus on the solution as opposed to the problem. And with that being said, I love you guys. Peace.